I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Old's Oscar Countdown, a bonus episode here, going to be breaking down my predictions for the Golden Globe nominations, which are going to be happening within the next few days here. Really excited to break things down for all of the film categories. But if you're new to the series, welcome. What I do every single week, and have been doing now for over 9 years now in our 10th season, is predict the Oscars each and every single week, talk about a different category. But now that we're in the thick of things, I also do some of these bonus episodes as well. This one being predicting what I think is going to get nominated for the Golden Globes. Then we're going to make another video in terms of predicting what's going to win and kind of some reactions as well along the way, as well as not for the Golden Globes, but also the SAG Awards, now known as the Actors Awards, ultimately counting down to the big one, the Oscars being the main one. So we have a lot of fun kind of covering all things awards, mostly focused on those Oscars each and every week on Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. But in a case like this, we will have multiple videos in a week here on Wednesday. Also coming up on Friday, we're going to have another video. So feel free to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on some of these bonus episodes. And let me know your predictions in the comments down below. I'd love to hear that. That's why I make these videos, to create a kind of an awesome film community where we can kind of trade our thoughts back and forth. So feel free to do that. And also feel free to use the timestamps in the description below. If you just want to see my predictions, you can check them out in text. If you want to hear some of my thoughts and reasonings, you can jump out and around to different categories, or you can stick around for the whole video. I love when people do that as well. So if you're new to these kind of predictions videos, what I like to do is just read out my picks, talk about briefly why I chose, mostly in this case, the fifth or the sixth option. Most of the time, the kind of top 2 or 3 are relatively obvious, and put a little bit more of a focus on some of the acting and picture categories. And then when you talk about things like best box office achievement, I won't have a big long diatribe because it's anyone's guess with such a new category with such vague rules. So without further ado, let's jump into things, starting off with my predictions for best film drama. They are Sinners, Hamnet, Frankenstein, Sentimental Value, It Was Just an Accident, and The Secret Agent. So of those, Sinners, Hamnet are expected to get nominated for the Oscars, have it in there. I have Frankenstein slightly higher than Sentimental Value, and you'll see that in my predictions. I'm kind of betting on Frankenstein to do well. I think it's gotten a lot of increased momentum. I've really just an upward trajectory ever since it's kind of more muted response out of Venice. Once the general public has seen it, we start to see more and more appreciation for the movie. So I think that movie's at least from the kind of general public response, has been a stronger response than something like Sentimental Value. I still have Sentimental Value getting in there because I have it for a lot of acting nominations, and do think that it will be, a well-appreciated movie. Came second place at Cannes, the International Film Festival. This is an international group, so that benefits it there. Then I went with It Was Just an Accident, which is a movie that I think has been actually decreasing in recent weeks. The general public hasn't been as in love with the movie as maybe I thought. I think not a lot of people have even seen the movie. Its kind of rollout was a little bit odd, so that does kind of slightly concern me that it could potentially miss. But I think based on its reputation, based on its pedigree as a Palme d'Or winner, it should ultimately get in here in what is somewhat of a weaker drama category this year. Actually, the comedy musical side of things for both, I think, the acting and film are actually a little bit more competitive. That being said, I think It Was Just an Accident, the appreciation of the film generally by critics, even though not a lot of the general public has seen it, and then also that kind of prestige of being a Palme d'Or winner and reputation alone will kind of push it over the edge for ultimately a nomination. And then my final pick, I went with The Secret Agent over a movie like Avatar: The Way of Water. And I did that because of how the Golden Globes group has changed. We've been covering the Golden Globes now here for 10 seasons, and for a long time, it was the Hollywood Foreign Press Association, which was this kind of shadowy cabal of not exactly sure how many voters. And they kind of recently got disbanded a couple of years ago. So now there's a new Golden Globes group. They're a for-profit organization. What's notable as well is that you can actually see all 400 voting members, the picture of what they look like, their name, and what country they're associated with. So that helps us a lot in terms of understanding the type of voter that's within the group versus the Golden Globes in the past. It's a little bit difficult. Now, there was quite a bit of overlap from the old Golden Globes membership. Not quite a bit, but a certain percentage, I think at 40 or so, got jumped from the old Golden Globe membership to the new Golden Globe membership. So there's still some of that old taste that's in there, that appreciation for movie stars, for example. That being said, it is still a new group, so we're going to have to use more of the past 2 years as really kind of key signifiers. And what we've seen in those past 2 years is more of an appreciation towards international movies. We'll see more, love for Emilia Perez, for example, last year, or just surprise nominations like Fernando Torres getting a nomination and then winning last year, or even something like Alma Poitsi a couple of years ago for Fallen Leaves. That was a huge surprise. A little bit more towards non-English language performers, more towards international non-English language films. So I ultimately went with a non-English language film. And this is a kind of a key example where if you look at just 3 or so years ago with Avatar: The Way of Water, that was an old Golden Globes group, the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. They really liked Avatar. They gave it a drama nomination. They also gave James Cameron a nomination for director. Now it's a new group. So will this group appreciate James Cameron as much? When I initially thought about it, I went, yeah, of course, right? They gave him the director nomination just a few years ago. But then you go, oh, wait, this is a different group. This is more of an international group now. And the Hollywood Foreign Press Association was always international focused, but this is, I think, even more so with their taste, particularly within the past couple of years. And when you go and actually see where all the 400 voting members, their country of origin, which is a little bit complicated because I think a lot of them also live in the United States, but maybe that's where they're initially from. Regardless, if you look at their country of origin, the largest contingent is Brazilians. So that's why The Secret Agent, I think, has a good shot of getting nominated here. Not only do you have Golden Globe members, the largest contingent being Brazilians, second largest is Argentinians. Now, if you were to group it by continent, it actually is Europeans being number one. So it's kind of a dual combination there, but I think it's not unnotable from the fact that Fernando Torres not only got the nomination, but won for Best Lead Actress in a Drama last year for I'm Still Here, which is a movie that not a lot of people saw, but was a movie that was very popular in Brazil and from a famous Brazilian director. And then you have a similar situation here, another famous Brazilian director making a movie about a similar time in Brazil's history that may have, a intense resonance to the Brazilian members of this branch and of this, voting group. So you have that kind of hometown bias, which was ultimately why I went with The Secret Agent here. You also have the fact that the largest continent of the members are from Europe. And we know that recently The Secret Agent topped number 4 at the top 10 films of the year list from Cahiers du Cinema, a very notable European outlet. And I've been noticing as well, aside from Cahiers du Cinema, similar European outlets ranking The Secret Agent as one of the best films, which indicates to me that it not only has the Brazilian support as expected, it being kind of a Brazilian film, but then also has support from European critics and European audiences as well, which we know is a large group of this voting body too. So a lot of kind of combinations of it, being a well critically acclaimed movie as well, we'll appreciate it out of Cannes. There's a lot of things going for it, and I think this is a classic example and why I wanted to bring it up at top of the difference between kind of the new Golden Globes voting body versus the old Hollywood Foreign Press Association. The old Hollywood Foreign Press Association may have appreciated like a big Hollywood epic like Avatar, but maybe the new group is going to appreciate more of a smaller film, a little bit more international, non-English language focused film like The Secret Agent. That's ultimately why I went with it for my final slot. Then Best Film, Comedy or Musical, I have One Battle After Another, Marty Supreme, Wicked for Good, Wake Up Dead Man, Jay Kelly, and No Other Choice. So the top two for me, pretty obvious. One Battle After Another, Marty Supreme, going to get nominated at the Oscars, very likely to get nominated here. Then my third pick, I still went with Wicked for Good. Still believe that this will do well enough in terms of nominations and, split categories, right? I think a lot of people have been panicking over the response of Wicked critically and have been removing it from a bunch of categories. I think that's even totally okay with something like Best Picture, frankly. I don't think that's a crazy reaction. I do think it's a bit of a crazy reaction to completely ignore it from the Globes here. I still think Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo are likely to get nominated here. I think a song is also likely to get nominated. So it's still going to have some appreciation from the Globes in a special category where you have, dramas and comedy split, where they appreciate and musicals are able to compete in kind of like a separate side category here. So this group just last year really loved the movie and gave it the Box Office Achievement Award. So I'd be surprised if they completely blank it. And I do think because it's getting in for song, and I think it's going to get a couple of acting nominations, it should kind of easily cruise to a nomination here. There's not entirely always internal logic. Like last year we saw September 5 get one nomination for Best Film Drama and nothing else. That being said, there should be still, I think, some internal logic if you like a couple of performances, if you like the song in it. Why not ultimately include it here for Best Film? Not a guarantee, but I'm still somewhat confident that just because they like the first one so much and this is a conclusion to the story, they're going to want to appreciate the series as a whole. Then I went with Wake Up Dead Man, because another kind of one of core principles of my predictions is that the Globes, now in particular, that they're a for-profit enterprise. They really care about the show and how the show does in terms of ratings and numbers. And we know that when celebrities appear on the show, it gets increased ratings, increased numbers, and more profit that way. So even if it's in the back of some of their minds of wanting to keep the show viable and crucial, that they're going to want to invite movies like Wake Up Dead Man, which have big, large ensembles, where they may not nominate Daniel Craig or Glenn Close or Josh Brolin or Jeremy Renner, but, if they nominate for the movie, maybe they show as well. We know they've appreciated big ensemble type movies in the past. Just last year was something like Amelia Perez. So Wake Up Dead Man similar has that kind of a path of a big ensemble. And it's, worth noting too that Knives Out, the first one, and Glass Onion, the last film, also did well at the Golden Globes, getting in for this category. So there is a little bit of a legacy appreciation for this franchise in general. Then I went with Jay Kelly. This is a movie that Netflix is still really campaigning hard, along with a movie like Frankenstein or Train Dreams. I think it will appreciate more so to maybe the older Globes members of the Hollywood system. Even still, though, many of these 400 members are critics and like movies. And I think if you like movies or someone associated with movies in general, you'll have a stronger connection to kind of the movie, which is about this midlife crisis of a movie star, which the general public may not appreciate because it's a little bit elitist. But if any group were to appreciate it, it's definitely the Academy. And if it's still a major contender for the Oscars and could get in for Best Picture, which I do think it could, it should be at least here in contention with a nomination here. It needs to kind of get in here. Also in line with some of my other predictions later on. So want to keep things kind of consistent. And then I also went with No Other Choice. And I think this is kind of a key demarcation point between how you think the Globes are. Are they still, really leaning into the international side, or are they still a little bit more of their old past? If they're still a little bit more in their old past, they may go with a movie like Bugonia, but I want to go with a movie here like No Other Choice, which is, an example of why I went with The Secret Agent, for example, in Best Film Drama. They appreciate more international films. This is an internationally really focused group, a new group that have appreciated movies more so like Amelia Perez than Honora. And if that's the case, I think they're going to want to nominate a movie that was well respected out of Venice, which is getting a lot of critical reviews. A movie that, unlike Bugonia, which came out and did poorly at the box office and actually saw its Rotten Tomatoes decrease coming out of Venice, No Other Choice has held strong, and more people have seen it, more people really have appreciated it. And they've nominated Park Chan-wook's films in the past, like Decision to Leave. So there is some appreciation still within the legacy members of this group as well. And I do think if we're strictly going to the comedy side of things, it is a very kind of funny, satirical movie that is easy to resonate with both international member voters and American voters. I'm actually based on an American novel too, so there is kind of this great kind of cross-pollination. But more so, it's a statement for me saying this is an international group that likes international non-English language films. That's why they're going to go with the critically acclaimed international movie that has a lot of appreciation more than the slightly lesser Yorgos Lanthimos movie like Bugonia. Then my picks for Best Actress in a Drama, I went with Jessie Buckley for Hamnet, Renate Reinsve for Sentimental Value, Jennifer Lawrence for Die My Love, Sydney Sweeney for Christy, Julia Roberts for After the Hunt, and Laura Dern for Is This Thing On? So the first two are Oscar hopefuls in well-liked movies, and then the rest are kind of really up in the air, hard to predict. But ultimately, I'll explain each why I went with each. The first one, or the third one there, being Jennifer Lawrence in Die My Love. I think, like I mentioned before, they're going to want to have as many movie stars as possible because this is ultimately a for-profit organization, and having big movie stars at your show is a great way to get ratings. Jennifer Lawrence is a huge movie star, but also did a really brave performance that I think will be appreciated. We've seen the past couple of years here that the Globes don't necessarily love subtle performances as they love like really big, emotional, intense performances, and that's what Jennifer Lawrence is here in Die My Love. Pregnant at times, naked at times, going crazy, losing her mind. It is a kind of showy, all-involved performance, and I think there will be an appreciation for a movie star taking a risk and making such a unique kind of a performance style within the movie that will be appreciated. Similarly with my next pick, which would be Sydney Sweeney in Christy, more of a physical performance in terms of transforming into this boxer. The movie is part sports drama, parts domestic abuse drama, so it has the kind of emotional parts of the sports drama, but still has that air of prestige with the kind of domestic abuse side of things based on a true story. I think that it's a kind of classical story structure, but it's a classic move for a young actress who wants to take herself seriously, transforms herself, plays a real life person, transforms physically, learns the boxing, things like that, in a kind of true life story. We've seen this path get nominated multiple times before, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a great movie. It's more so about the dedication of the performance. They'll still nominate an Ana de Armas for Blonde, so who's to say they won't nominate a movie like Christy, which has got pretty good reviews, if not amazing reviews, but has a very intense, committed performance by Sydney Sweeney, someone who is trying to get a nomination, who has been doing a lot of PR and a lot of publicity and media kind of getting out in front of things. And then I had Julia Roberts for After the Hunt, a movie that's even more critically divisive, but I actually do think will be more appreciated by this group which has appreciated more divisive movies like Saltburn in the past. I think they'll appreciate the kind of both sides of it, politics that maybe the critics didn't like, but this maybe older group, the Golden Globes, if you see the members, are still leaning on the older side of things. They may appreciate that somewhat kind of nuance and tackling of topical issues, even if some critics may judge, this is a thing that we were talking about 8 years ago. If you have an older voter member, this may feel more current to them. I think that's notable. And Julia Roberts is still a huge movie star that brings an era of prestige and class, and does go for it in certain sequences in this, and really is having this kind of her life crumble on top of her. There'll be an appreciation there from just a structure and a movie star taking a chance on a kind of a hot topic issue. I think that this is a kind of classic Globes nomination. And then my final pick, I went with Laura Dern for Is This Thing On? Laura Dern is a legacy Golden Globes member in terms of, even when she was 15 years old, she won Miss Golden Globe. She's won before. She's been nominated many times on both the film and TV side. So ultimately, I went with her over, let's say, someone like a Tessa Thompson for Hedda, because I don't know anybody that's seen Hedda. That's a showy performance, yes, but Tessa Thompson has never been nominated before, versus Laura Dern with Is This Thing On? Was recently screened for a lot of these critics right before voting happened, so it has top of mind awareness. And then you have Laura Dern, who I'm ultimately predicting is just more well liked, more well appreciated, not necessarily from a performance standpoint, but just from a we like this person, we like this actor. I also think it's notable that, not in this category, but last year with Best Film Drama, and just generally a trend with the Golden Globes last year, was that they appreciated more older actors than younger actors. They went with Tilda Swinton or Pamela Anderson over someone like a Saoirse Ronan for The Outrun. They went with Willem Dafoe in Poor Things over something like Dominic Sessa in The Holdovers. Consistently the past couple of years, they've been appreciating more of the older, established actors, both male and female. So are they going to go with Laura Dern or Tessa Thompson? I'm going to go with the one that they like a little bit more, the older actress, the more respected actress, versus Tessa Thompson, who I'm sure is great in Hedda. Haven't seen the movie myself, but isn't, still a young actress, still a lot of opportunity, isn't as famous for the for-profit side of things for Laura Dern at your award show, but also isn't as maybe well liked as Laura Dern. Laura Dern is a very well liked, established kind of past nominee. They may just want to nominate her because they like her. That's a factor of these awards that we have to consider as well. Now my picks for Best Actor in a Drama. I went with Wagner Moura for The Secret Agent, Michael B. Jordan for Sinners, Dwayne Johnson for The Smashing Machine, Jeremy Allen White for Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere, Joel Edgerton for Train Dreams, and Daniel Day-Lewis for Anemone. So the first couple I actually think are going to get nominated at the Oscars, with Wagner Moura even having a slight preference here, potentially for a win, but both in strong movies that I also have in for Best Film Drama. Then I went with Dwayne Johnson for The Smashing Machine. I may regret this just because this is a movie that's really decreased in terms of its popularity. That being said, where it was popular at the Venice Film Festival, a European audience there, we know that this is a largely international group here at the Golden Globes. Maybe the Europeans are a little bit more appreciative of this movie and performance in general. And even some of the Americans will appreciate the fact that, like Jennifer Lawrence with Time I Love, Dwayne Johnson here, a big movie star who decided to do a smaller movie, a little bit more of a risk, transform himself into a real-life person. Historically, that's been well appreciated by the Golden Globes. And they have also, the Smashing Machine team has done award-specific industry stuff post the initial theatrical release marketing. So there is a little bit more of top-of-mind awareness, and they really do seem to be campaigning for that kind of nomination. More so, I think, in particular for Dwayne Johnson, but maybe we even see something like an Emily Blunt nomination. That's not out of the realm of possibility either. So keep that in mind there. I do think it's going to get nominated. Jeremy Allen White for Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere. Maybe more of a classic Globes pick, but even still, with the past couple of years, whether it be the appreciation for musicals or music-based movies like Amelia Perez or A Complete Unknown. Let's not forget, A Complete Unknown was a movie that not a lot of people had seen before the Golden Globes last year, that surprised and got in for Edward Norton, that surprised and got in for Best Film Drama. I think I ended up predicting it, but it was on the kind of 5-6 slot. It wasn't a guarantee at the time, and they went for a music-based movie. So who's to say they're not going to go for another music-based movie here? Another famous person playing another famous person. I think they'll appreciate and they've always appreciated the singing, dancing, the musical side of these performances. And despite this being in the drama category, Springsteen does do some really great impersonations of Bruce Springsteen within some of the recordings and him on stage, and the kind of commitment to playing a famous person and some of those challenges is always kind of catnip for Globes voters. So I think Jeremy Allen White, even though the movie has decreased in esteem, particularly within the past month or so, I still think he kind of sneaks in for a nomination based on the performance alone. Then I went with Joel Edgerton for Train Dreams, a movie that could surprise and get in for Best Film Drama or potentially even something like Score. I ultimately just have Edgerton in here because it's not a super flashy performance, which I've been kind of leaning towards. It's more of a subtle performance. That being said, it's a subtle performance over the course of this entire man's life. So there's some ambitiousness within the storytelling side of things. And if you've seen the movie, the things that happen to him are somewhat dramatic, even though if his response isn't always crazy and big and dramatic. He's also a past nominee from 2016 in Loving. So this group, at least the old group, has been appreciative of his work in the past. And I do think it's a critically acclaimed enough movie, campaigned by Netflix, which is always great at getting a lot of their movies seen. So it should be seen, and in a bit of a weaker category here, he should be able to kind of sneak in. And then my final pick, I went with Daniel Day-Lewis in Anemone, who I don't think is going to get any other awards attention aside from the Golden Globes. And for me, it was either between this performance and Will Arnett in Is This Thing On? And at the end of the day, I went with Daniel Day-Lewis because I would feel horrible about myself and feel like just a complete idiot if I bet on Will Arnett over one of the greatest living actors of all time. And I do think a lot of Golden Globes voters will go for that. They'll say, well, I can't not nominate Daniel Day-Lewis, even though maybe I didn't love the movie and it's not a real kind of strong Oscar contender. I'm still going to nominate him because he's a legend. And it would be just, from a personal standpoint, I couldn't live with myself if I predicted Will Arnett and I didn't predict Daniel Day-Lewis. And then come Golden Globe nominations morning, they say Daniel Day-Lewis. And I think, why would I predict Will Arnett over one of the greatest actors of all time in Daniel Day-Lewis? That's maybe more of a personal thing in terms of how I'm okay with risk and how dumb I'm willing to make myself feel. But I think a lot of Globes members will feel similarly. Hey, let's respect one of the greatest living actors of all time for coming back, for unretiring, for giving us another great performance. Even if I didn't love the movie, give him his respect, give him his flowers, give him the nomination. Then my predictions for Best Actress in a Comedy or Musical. I went with Cynthia Erivo for Wicked for Good, Emma Stone for Bugonia, Amanda Seyfried for The Testament of Anne Lee, Rose Byrne, If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You, Kate Hudson, Song Sung Blue, and Chase Infinity, One Battle After Another. So the top two, actually there's no top two really. Cynthia Erivo for Wicked for Good. I'm still betting on Wicked. The fact that she sings and dances and commits herself in terms of the musical side of things, they've always been appreciative of. Still think she's going to get nominated. About the win, who knows? We'll figure out when this nomination's come out. Then similarly with Emma Stone for Bugonia, haven't been totally in on the Bugonia train in terms of it getting a bunch of nominations. I've been kind of decreasing it in terms of my appreciation for it as a strong Oscar contender. That being said, Emma Stone is a movie star, someone who they've nominated in the past before. We know that they still like Yorgos Lanthimos' movies. Jesse Plemons got nominated for Kinds of Kindness just last year, albeit in a weaker category, but they still have an appreciation for even some of his lesser works, and we know that they see it. And I think there's going to be an appreciation for Emma in terms of her commitment, the fact that she actually shaved her head for this role, and there's a bravery in the sense of that commitment to it that I think will ultimately be appreciated by a big-time movie star like Emma Stone, continuing to make interesting and odd choices with her career, but movies that are always great, just kind of odder type of movies for mainstream audiences. Then I went with Amanda Seyfried for The Testament of Anne Lee, which is an all-involved performance. If you've seen the movie, it's terrific, and she is really the center of it and does lots of big emotions, and it's a big performance in many ways, and there's singing and dancing and physical exertion, And there's just a lot to it. And if you really like the movie, there's an intense appreciation. And even if you don't like the movie, you appreciate the commitment that she had within the movie. There's no half steps. There's no winking or nudging. It's a totally earnest, kind of sentimental movie in certain ways. And she totally commits herself to this prophet of Anne Lee in the film. So I think Amanda Seyfried will be all well appreciated. Then I went with Rose Byrne for If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. I'm surprised that this movie is in comedy. It's more of a horror movie than it is a comedy, but she is in this category. She will be campaigning in here, at least for the Golden Globes. And if she has, a chance and really wants to compete for the Oscars, she has to get nominated here. This is one of the most critically acclaimed performances of the year. So if the Globes want to be kind of prestigious and similar to the critics, they'll do, have similar tastes here and nominate her, which is truly a true performance, a lead performance that is, where she's in every single frame. She has these big emotions that she's able to kind of showcase, and it is once again another type of a big performance that I think the Golden Globes will appreciate. I also went with Kate Hudson for Song Sung Blue, which is a classic Globes type performance, where this is more so a pick of the existing members of the Golden Globes. Let's not forget, back in 2021, I think it was, they nominated Kate Hudson for this movie called Music, which, I do this, really intensely, and I focus on things, and I try to follow very closely at the Oscars and award season. And I remember back then, I had no idea what music was. So if anything, it's just a testament to the fact that if Kate Hudson has a movie, the Golden Globes voters are going to see it, even if it has music, 10% on Rotten Tomatoes. They're still going to nominate it if they appreciate what Kate Hudson does. I think similarly here, they'll appreciate the movie. I haven't seen the movie itself, but I've seen the documentary that it's based on. Tragic story, also inspiring story. Gives Kate Hudson to give a lot of range for emotions, while also being charming, while also allowing her to sing and do these kind of Neil Diamond type performances and use her great voice to showcase. Once again, appreciating the kind of ability to not only act, but sing and dance. Same reason why I have Amanda Seyfried, same reason why I have Cynthia Erivo. A bigger performance in terms of the skill that's required to do it. It's more than just acting, right? It's singing, and it's everything else, and portraying a real life person. Layers to it, and the fact that they really like Kate Hudson as well. I think they'll want to nominate her. And then my final pick, I went with Chase Infinity for One Battle After Another. I'm a little bit concerned with this just because I mentioned before, they haven't been as receptive to the younger actors. That being said, Chase Infinity is campaigning as the lead actor of one of the year's most acclaimed movies, really the most acclaimed movies of the decade. The frontrunner to win for Best Film Comedy or Musical, best frontrunner to win for Best Picture at the Oscars. So she should kind of comfortably ride the success of the film to a nomination. That being said, I am a little bit concerned that there's a little bit of a bias towards the younger actors, and that may show up here with a Chase Infinity miss. But I'm not predicting that. There wasn't a lot of great options as well, so still included her within my 6 predictions. Okay, now my predictions for Best Actor in a Comedy or Musical. I have Leonardo DiCaprio for One Battle After Another, Timothée Chalamet for Marty Supreme, Ethan Hawke for Blue Moon, Lee Byung-hun for No Other Choice, George Clooney for Jay Kelly, and Jesse Plemons for Bugonia. So the top 2 picks, that'll be a really fun race once they get nominated, but they're very likely to get nominated. Legendary actors in their own right in really well-liked movies. Then I have Ethan Hawke for Blue Moon, which I'm actually pretty confident is going to get nominated. This is a movie that's seen a lot of critical appreciation. Ethan Hawke is a past nominee at the Golden Globes before, and is also a well-respected actor who's at the center of this movie and has a lot to do and lots of lines to learn. And he really is at the center of this kind of great performance, and he is the movie. It is play-like in how much it's reliant on him, and he knocks it out of the park. I think does a terrific job, and I think the fact that the challenge of knowing all this dialogue and memorizing all this, I think will be appreciated by the Globes members and voters. Then I went with Lee Byung-hun for No Other Choice. In connection to my prediction that it's going to get nominated for Best Film, Comedy, or Musical, I like to have my predictions kind of sync up in the way, so if I'm right about one thing, I'm right about something else, kind of have that internal logic and consistency. And like I mentioned earlier, whether it be Dolly de Lyon for Triangle of Sadness, her nomination, or Ama Poitsi, or even the fact of, 2 nominations from Emilia Perez last year, or Fernando Torres for I'm Still Here. Their Globes, in particular the past few years, have been more and more likely to nominate non-English language performers. So why not Here for No Other Choice? If they really like it enough to nominate it for, Best Film or Comedy or Musical, then Lee Byung-young should get in here as well, just because he is the center of the movie. He has so much to do with the satire, with the comedy, to the tragedy of the situation. It really is a true central performance kind of a movie. And I think if the Globes are truly more of an international group now, like I'm predicting them to be, that's not really at the heart of my predictions. I think Lee gets nominated here. Then I went with George Clooney for Jay Kelly, because I think they want movie stars at their show. But I think Clooney in particular is not just a movie star like Ryan Reynolds is a movie star. He's a movie star with legacy, with class, an air of prestige. That if he shows up to your award show, there's a sense of classiness that he brings to it. Also a movie that's about him as a movie star, this kind of meta performance that people who like movies, like I think the Golden Globe voters, of course do and are so involved with the industry, will have an even more stronger emotional connection to. And then with my final pick, I went with Jesse Plemons for Bugonia, because I was looking at this category last year and noticed how I didn't predict Jesse Plemons for Kinds of Kindness and instead predicted something like Ryan Reynolds for Deadpool and Wolverine, because I thought they would want the big movie star. And they do want movie stars, but they still want movie stars, but with a little bit of prestige attached to it. So, for example, I didn't go with Daniel Craig for Wake Up Dead Man, his third appearance as this character in more of a blockbuster type of a movie. I went with the actor's favorite actor in the case of Jesse Plemons. A little bit more of the prestige side of things. I still went with Clooney, but Clooney is a movie that could potentially get nominated for Best Picture. So I wanted to go a little bit less broad, a little bit more appreciation for the prestige side of things. Like if we can get a movie star that's in a prestige movie, I think the Globes will do that naturally, but they're not going to predict, a more broader movie like Deadpool and Wolverine over something like a great performance from an actor that's really well respected. I'm not going to make that same mistake here, so I went with Jesse Plemons for Bugonia. Does a lot, sweaty, very, the key performance I think in the movie and has the most to do throughout most of the runtime, and is a kind of more classy, higher, well-respected prestige pick than some of the other options. So went with Jesse Plemons there. Okay, now Best Supporting Actor. My picks are Stellan Skarsgård for Sentimental Value, Sean Penn for One Battle After Another, Paul Mescal for Hamnet, Benicio del Toro for One Battle After Another, Jacob Elordi, Frankenstein, and Adam Sandler for Jay Kelly. This lineup, we don't need to go into too much detail about. It's essentially my top 5 for the Oscars. So if you want to see my Best Supporting Actor video and why I predicted those videos, whatever, a month or so ago, check out that video. And feel very confident in those 5. One Battle After Another success. Frankenstein, really a big believer in with Elordi. Hamnet, well liked. Same thing with Sentimental Value. And then the 6th pick, I went with Adam Sandler for Jay Kelly. In part because some of the other options, Delroy Lindo for Sinners, I think has decreased in terms of that's more of an ensemble movie. I don't know if he's the clear standout for a lot of people. There's a lot of appreciation for that movie in general, but from different characters, there's versus something like Adam Sandler and Jay Kelly is almost the co-lead of the movie, is a big movie star, so they want to have him at the center there. Once again, connected to the fact that I have Clooney in for a nomination. I also have the movie in for Best Comedy or Musical. So if that's the case, they would like the movie theoretically enough to get Sandler in for a nomination. And I think he's the key to unlocking the movie in certain ways because he's the non-movie star character of the movie. So you can see kind of the toll of how the movie star, who is having his own emotional crisis, but also how he affects some of the other people that kind of orbit around him that aren't as famous as him, but still kind of struggle with some of those same sacrifices. Then Best Supporting Actress, I went with Ariana Grande for Wicked for Good, Teyana Taylor for One Battle After Another, Inga Ibsdottir Lilius for Sentimental Value, Odessa Zion for Marty Supreme, Elle Fanning for Sentimental Value, and Glenn Close for Wake Up Dead Man. So this category is pretty fun, a lot more than the supporting actor category, because it reminds me of a couple years ago with 2023 when Angela Bassett won the Golden Globe, and we all thought, okay, is she going to win the Oscar? And that was just a really exciting category for that season. I think this year is going to be similar, where there's no clear winner to win, particularly since Ariana Grande in Wicked for Good, who's maybe the frontrunner right now, but Wicked for Good, didn't do too well in terms of reviews, so maybe that's not the clear winner anymore. Still have her in, though. Same thing with Teyana Taylor for One Battle After Another. 2 movies I have for multiple nominations and in the Best Film category, so wanted to include them there. Then I went with Inga Ibsdottir Lilius, slightly higher than Elle Fanning, although I have both of them in. Mostly because I do see that the general consensus, ever since the public has seen it, has been similar to my consensus, which is that Inga Ibsdottir Lilius is the standout of the movie, her and Stellan Skarsgård, particularly because she is kind of an unknown, so there's a surprise factor to it. She also has some of the most emotional moments of the movie because some of the other characters are more depressed or repressed, so she's out allowed to express her emotions a little bit more. But I still have Elle Fanning getting a nomination because she has a couple of scenes where she really kind of knocks it out of the park. A little bit concerned that Sentimental Value maybe isn't as well appreciated as I thought. I think this is going to be a big test for the movie, but still wanted to ultimately commit to it and say, no, yes, both of them will get nominated here, and the movie will be appreciated overall. I still have it getting in for screenplay and director and picture. So it's going to have to pick up a couple of other nominations. I think it gets at least one of, if anything, Inga gets the slight preference, but include both of them at the end of the day. Then I went with Odessa Zion for Marty Supreme. And it may be Gwyneth Paltrow because they appreciate the celebrity factor, but I went against the young actor bias and the celebrity factor bias and just listened to the reviews. And the reviews almost all agree that Odessa Zion is the clear standout supporting actress, classic kind of an Oscar-nominated role. So they're going to appreciate her more than other people. And I think that's notable. So the fact that everyone's been saying Odessa Zion is the standout, why not predict her here? In the same way, A Complete Unknown was a movie that not a lot of people had seen, December release, but Edward Norton got nominated at the Globes, and then eventually Monica Barbaro did. If Odessa Zion is the clear number 2 standout from the movie, aside from Timothy, and when you think the movie's going to get nominated for screenplay and film and potentially even director, then why not Odessa Zion? If they like the movie so much, and everyone agrees that she's so great in the movie, then why wouldn't she be included here in a bit of a weaker category, I think, with less contention and competitors in something like supporting actress? And then my final pick, I went with Glenn Close for Wake Up Dead Man because you have to predict surprises. And I think this Gold Derby has like a 6% chance of happening. But, you have to be strategic with your surprises. This is a category that I think has a lot of potential variation, whether it be Gwyneth Paltrow for Marty Supreme or, Amy Madigan for Weapons. There's a lot of kind of questions about how this category is going to shape out. So I knew that this was a category that I think will surprise a lot of people. So let's make a surprise in a category that has the most opportunity for surprise. Still be a little bit calculated, a little bit smart on that side of things. So a smart surprise, but still a risk, still a surprise. Ultimately, I went with Glenn Close because A, I have the movie getting nominated for Best Film or Comedy. I do think the movie is going to be well appreciated by this group at the end of the day. I've seen the movie. She's great in it. She has a key standout at the very end of the movie. So when you walk away, you go, wow, she's really great. I think she's going to get nominated. She kind of stays with you in that sense. And then the final point is that she's a past Globe winner, a legend. In the same way they nominated Pamela Anderson last year, who was a legend of the screen. Same thing with Tilda Swinton. I think they're going to want to nominate Glenn Close, who's been nominated and won many times here, who's the acting legend in a movie that they like, with a great kind of stand-up performance that really peaks at the end of the movie too. And, maybe there's even a potential possibility of her potentially winning the Golden Globe and going on for the Oscar. This race is so wide open that she just needs to get that nomination, and this may be her first opportunity or final opportunity to win that Oscar that she's been chasing for so long. Then for Best Director, I have Paul Thomas Anderson, One Battle After Another, Chloe Zhao, Hamnet, Ryan Coogler, Sinners, Joachim Trier, Sentimental Value, Guillermo del Toro, Frankenstein, and Kleber Mendoza Filho for The Secret Agent. So I'm taking some chances here, another category where I'm trying to take some chances, because they go a little bit weird on the directing side, particularly with the Golden Globes. The first 3 are pretty standard, well-liked movies: Hamnet, Sinners, One Battle. Then I kind of begrudgingly went with Joachim Trier, just because Sentimental Value have so many other nominations that it would be weird for it to get all those nominations and him not to appear in director. That being said, Alexander Payne didn't get nominated for The Holdovers. We usually see these types of writing, acting-focused movies don't get nominated for directing. So there's a little bit of concern on my side that this type of director doesn't really get nominated all the time, so he wouldn't get in here. This kind of directing style doesn't always get appreciated. But he is ultimately an international director, and I want to include as many international directors as possible because I've been really trying to lean this season overall and with this new Golden Globes group towards international films. So still ultimately included them here, somewhat begrudgingly. Then a couple of surprises: Guillermo del Toro and Kleber Mendoza Filho. And the way I looked at it was I wanted to predict an American director and another international director. So the American side, I went with either Josh Safdie or Guillermo del Toro. I went with Frankenstein. I wanted to take a look at the race where it is right now. And Frankenstein has only been increasing in terms of its popularity. I think it's just as popular in terms of its Oscar chances as a movie like Marty Supreme. And I think at the end of the day, if you're looking at appreciation in terms of the movies, in terms of Oscar race, they're similar in terms of the race, Marty Supreme and Frankenstein. The difference? Guillermo del Toro is a more well-respected director. He does a lot of publicity. He does a lot of campaigning for his movies. He's out there and talking to Globe voters individually. And we've seen nominations like Payal Kapadia for All We Imagine As Light, or even James Cameron for Avatar: The Way of Water, where they don't have a lot of acting nominations or any acting nominations, but that doesn't matter. I don't think you should look at the nominations here for director. A lot of people do this and go, okay, well, I'm going to predict Yorgos Lanthimos because I have Bugonia for 4 of their nominations. They don't always kind of have this one-to-one clear connection there. Sometimes it makes sense if you're predicting a movie to do well, it should show up in multiple categories, but for directing, it doesn't always make sense. In particular, for something like, Guillermo del Toro, who has a Lordy, but this is an appreciation more so for the technical craft of the movie. So even though they don't have a lot of technical categories, Guillermo del Toro, I do think, will be appreciated for Frankenstein, even though there's not as many categories here, for the technical side of things, as a way to reward the movie generally, because they don't have the opportunity to do so on the technical side of things. They can reward Sentimental Value in all the acting categories, but this is the one opportunity to reward Guillermo. So that was my American kind of a slot. And then I wanted to do an international slot, and it was between Jafar Panahi for It Was Just an Accident, or Kleber Mendoza Filho for The Secret Agent. I went with the Brazilian contingent. I went with the fact that there's more Brazilians than there are Iranians in the branch. And I think that both of them are well appreciated. But with most recent kind of top 10 lists, I think The Secret Agent is just as well appreciated as It Was Just an Accident. And I'm concerned generally that Neon's rollout of It Was Just an Accident hasn't been as strong as maybe the other movies have been in past years, and that they've kind of bungled the release a little bit, whereas The Secret Agent has been, just as strong and has kind of more natural grassroots appreciation. Then for Best Screenplay, I have Hamnet, One Battle After Another, Sentimental Value, Sinners, It Was Just an Accident, and Marty Supreme. This I don't have much to say, just because this is the lineup potentially for Best Director. These are the strongest films overall in terms of their chances to get Best Film Drama or Best Film Comedy nominations. The one missing here being Frankenstein, which is not a script-focused type of a movie, not necessarily the originality of a movie like Sinners or uniqueness of something like Marty Supreme. And, the one movie I was concerned about maybe missing would be something like It Was Just an Accident. That being said, its strongest point of the movie is its screenplay. If this was a movie that had a kind of okay screenplay, similar to something like The Secret Agent, not that flashy, I may go with The Secret Agent because I think that's maybe a slightly stronger movie. I have it in for drama, I also have it in for director. But ultimately, It Was Just an Accident, even though I'm a little bit concerned of it decreasing overall in terms of appreciation, its standout part is the script. I think there's a possibility it misses out on director and drama, but still gets in for screenplay. I feel that highly about it being the kind of flashy part, the selling part of the film. But for the other nominees, very standard. I really just went with what are the most well-liked movies that are going to get in for director and film drama. Screenplay, the Globes don't really like to go off their beaten path. They do sometimes for director, and less so for screenplay. Best Animated Feature, I have K-Pop Demon Hunters, Zootopia 2, Arco, Elio, Scarlet, and Little Amelie, or the character of Rain. The top 2 here are locks. Then I went with Arco, which is a French movie, so the fact that this is more of an international group helps. Independent movie, yes, but they've been leaning more independent in general. Last year they gave the award to Flo before the Oscars, when that was a little bit of a surprise. Also nominated Memoirs of a Snail, so they're okay with independent animation as well. Elio, original Pixar. For as much as the Oscars love original Pixar, the Golden Globes love original Pixar as well. And sometimes, the critique with something like Elio would be, oh, well, it's kind of a kiddie type of a movie, right? Yes, that may be true, but the Globes in particular have actually leaned a little bit more kid-focused in the past on the Oscars, nominating movies like Super Mario Brothers, even going back to, giving the win to something like Claws in the past. They're okay with that. Then I went with Scarlet. Mamoru Hosoda is the director. He's been nominated in the past for Mirai. The Globes like to nominate more anime films, so this could be something like Demon Slayer. I ultimately went with Scarlet, though, just because it's a little bit more accessible, versus Demon Slayer, was connected to a TV show, so maybe you have to feel the need to watch that TV show before you like the movie. And generally, movies like, what are the past nominees here? Yeah, like Suzume or Suzume a couple years ago, or the year before. They're more appreciative of these type of anime movies. And then Little Amelie, another kind of well-appreciated international French movie. Best score, my picks are Frankenstein, Hamnet, Sinners, One Battle After Another, Marty Supreme, and Bugonia. Top 5 I'm very confident in. all well-liked movies from famous composers, particularly something like Alexander Desplat, who gets nominated at the Golden Globes, even if he doesn't get nominated at the Oscars, who did Frankenstein. And then, the Globes will like a little bit more challenging, odd-type scores. They gave them Winter Challengers last year, so I think they're going to be more partial to movies like One Battle After Another or Marty Supreme, with their little bit more slightly off-kilter type of a scores. Similarly, I think they'll like Bugonia for that same reason, but truthfully, I went with Bugonia in my 6th spot just because I wasn't confident in any of the other choices, so I wanted to go chalk. I wanted to go basic. If I'm predicting surprises in director and in, for example, supporting actress, let's go chalk. Let's go basic with some of the other categories. Have calculated risks. This one I didn't feel good about having a calculated risk for something like Surratt or Train Dreams or Jay Kelly or Wicked, so I just went with the kind of standard basic, what was ever the kind of consensus, which seemed to be Bugonia, and makes sense. In your face, loud score, Jerskin Fendrick's past nominee, so it makes sense overall. Best original song now, I have Golden, K-Pop Demon Hunters, I Lied to You, Sinners, The Girl in the Bubble, Wicked, Dream as One, Avatar Fire and Ash, Train Dreams from Train Dreams, and Last Time I Seen the Sun, Sinners. So the first one here, Golden, K-Pop Demon Hunters, made the Billboard Top 100 in terms of success, the kind of big standout pop hit from the movie, and I think the movie's going to get nominated for Best Animated Feature, and it's rare that a movie actually gets, hits the Billboard Top 100 charts, so they're going to want to appreciate and get that kind of star power and popularity of the movie generally to the category here and to the award show. I have I Lied to You from Sinners, and that's kind of the big standout sequence. I feel very confident in this song, less so in the other song. Still included both of them. This one here is the main kind of time-traveling dance sequence. That number is connected to that's that song that plays there. The other one is the end credits song. I included both of them just because Emilia Perez last year, well-liked movie, had 2 nominations. Barbie the year before had 3 nominations in this category. So if they like your movie and they like the music in your movie, they're more than happy to nominate multiple songs from your movie. I thought that Sinners is a strong movie this year and should get a couple of nominations kind of as a result of that. I also still went with The Girl in the Bubble for Wicked. There's 2 original songs from Wicked. I personally prefer this one, and it's connected to Ariana Grande, who I think is the stronger part of the movie. So that's why I went with her song in particular, but could be No Place Like Home, the other song from Wicked as well. Dream as One, Avatar Fire and Ash. What's notable about the recent Globes I mentioned earlier, a little bit more prestige. Movie stars, yes, but prestige if possible. Similar here with Best Original Song. They'll go with pop stars, but pop stars that are doing more emotional ballads. Springsteen, an emotional ballad for Addicted to Romance from She Came to Me. Same thing with last year. Miley Cyrus got nominated for The Last Showgirl. Pop star, but maybe more of an emotional, somber movie or song, rather than, I don't have Ed Sheeran for F1, which is a pop star doing a pop song in a pop mainstream movie. I don't think it's prestigious enough for the Globes. I think instead of something like Avatar Fire and Ash, a potential Best Film Drama nominee from a movie star, and the song is a little bit more somber and dramatic, a little bit fits within the mold of past nominees. Similar here for Train Dreams, just because it's not a pop star, but it's a famous composer-singer in Nick Cave. And I think the movie could potentially be a multiple nominee in potentially film drama. I have it in for Best Film Drama Actor too. So I know they're going to see the movie, and it does stand out as a song from some of the other nominees. And now the final 2 categories here. Best Film, Non-English Language. I have Sentimental Value, The Secret Agent, It Was Just an Accident, No Other Choice, The Voice of Hidden Rajab, and Sound of Falling. The top 4 I have in the general film categories of either comedy or drama, so I had to include them there. Then went with The Voice of Hidden Rajab, which is the most political movie, I think, of the year and has gotten a lot of press. And because of that, also got the Grand Jury Prize, which is the second place kind of runner-up prize at Venice, a European film festival. If we really truly think that this isn't more of an international group, the Golden Globes are now, they're going to want to have more international tastes, similar to the Venice jury nominating this movie. Also a political movie in the sense of, it being kind of about the conflict in Gaza. And then the final pick, I went with Sound of Falling. This fits in the mold of like past somber European films like The Girl with the Needle or Vermiglio last year. Also got second place at Camera Image and has been appearing in a lot of top 10 European outlets lists. I think there's a strong appreciation internationally for this movie. And then Best Cinematic and Box Office Achievement. I have 8 nominees. Sinners, Wicked for Good, Weapons, Avatar Fire and Ash, Zootopia 2, F1, Superman, How to Train Your Dragon, and Lilo and Stitch. just generally box office movies that make a lot of money, but also have good Rotten Tomatoes that are also well liked. The lowest one I have is Wicked for Good, 67%, but it's usually, like I said, 70% and higher. I didn't want to go with more movies that made most of their box office internationally, so I didn't go with Ninja 2 or Demon Slayer. I wanted to go American focused. And then went with movies that had good reviews, so didn't include a movie like a Minecraft movie. Wanted to include, more like How to Train Your Dragon. Wanted to include an animated film too, Zootopia 2. Concerns over something like Avatar The Way of Water or Avatar Fire and Ash, just because it hasn't come out yet, so will it have big box office? It's expected to, of course, but it hasn't gotten there yet. And then other movies, like How to Train Your Dragon and Superman and F1 made a lot of money during the summer, yes, but also have good Rotten Tomato scores. That was kind of my thinking with the one animated film there from Zootopia 2, because the past 2 years they've also had at least one animated film. But that's about it. Those are my predictions. Sorry for the long video, but wanted to really give my thoughts on everything here. Subscribe to the channel. Later on, I think I'm going to be doing some predictions maybe for Critics' Choice. Stay tuned for that. That could be fun as well. And then back to our regularly scheduled programming on Mondays at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. But that's about it. Until next time, stay tuned.